It's my journey, it's your journey. You need my help and I need yours. 'Cause we are...
Hello, family. Welcome to Journeys of Faith Super Saints podcast. Brother Joseph Fry Aldenhoven here at your service. Be sure to look at the description for special information of interest to you. Saint Brigid of Ireland's legacy of hospitality, bringing monastic charity into modern homes. In an age when the busy hum of daily life often drowns out our yearnings for deeper purpose, the radiant example of Saint Brigid of Ireland shines as a gentle, insistent call back to the warmth of selfless hospitality and living faith. For generations, the blazing hearth of Brigid's monastic charity transformed ancient Ireland, turning stone cloisters into beacons of divine generosity, where bread was broken and hearts were mended. Today, her legacy reverberates not just in remote Celtic ruins, but in every Christian soul longing to embody the gospel in its purest, most tangible form. At Journeys of Faith, we stand on holy ground made sacred by the footsteps of great saints like Brigid, guided by our founder's zeal for spreading the treasures and miracles of Catholic tradition. Our mission is apostolic, to invite every home, no matter how humble, into the grand tradition of Eucharistic devotion, living charity, and unwavering faithfulness to the Church's magisterium. As we follow Brigid's trail, lit by miracles, legendary acts of mercy, and her unwavering love for Christ, we are reminded that the true miracle lies in unity, sanctification, and the simple act of opening our doors to Christ disguised in the poor and the stranger. In this article, discover how Saint Brigid Saintes of Ireland's charity isn't meant only for history books. It is a living gift, ready to kindle monastic hospitality in the hearts and homes of all who long for God's love to breathe anew through them. Join us on this pilgrimage of faith, learn from a saint forged in the fire of Irish tradition, and rediscover spiritual treasures preserved and shared by Journeys of Faith for Catholics seeking to build the household of God, one precious act of charity at a time. Brigid's early life and call to radical generosity. Born in the rolling green hills of Falkirk, County Louth, Saint Brigid of Ireland's childhood pulses with legend, wonder, and the first glimmers of her world-changing compassion. Her family's pagan roots, her father, a powerful chieftain, stood in bold contrast to her mother's deep Christian faith. Brigid's earliest years were shaped by this tension, which she transformed into a fierce devotion to Christ and an unwavering passion for serving the poor. Stories from her youth echo across centuries, each brimming with the fire of the gospel. As a child, Brigid could never ignore hunger or suffering. She regularly gave away her family's food, milk, and even precious possessions to care for those in want. On one occasion, she emptied her father's pantry and distributed its contents to starving strangers. When reprimanded, her gentle boldness shone through. Christ dwells among the beggars, she insisted, turning every act of charity into an encounter with Jesus himself. Brigid's generosity didn't just border on the miraculous, it was suffused with it. The old hagiographies recount her stretching butter, bread, or beer to feed whole crowds, multiplying sustenance for those in desperate need. These stories, passed from generation to generation, inspired awe but also challenged hearts. Here was a young woman who lived with the radical trust of the saints, unflinching in her belief that nothing offered for love of God would ever truly run out. In an Ireland still emerging from paganism, Brigid's witness became a beacon for noble and peasant alike. Her actions redefined what Christianity meant on the Emerald Isle, proving that the heart of the true faith pulses in concrete acts of mercy, a life-wide yes to Christ disguised in the poor and vulnerable. This call to radical generosity would not only mark her own life, but would ripple out from Kildare Monastery transforming the very landscape of Irish hospitality for generations. Step into St. Brigid's living legacy. Bring the spirit of charity into your home today. Let Saint Brigid of Ireland's radiant example of hospitality and monastic charity transform your daily life with journeys of faith. As devout Catholics united in love for the Eucharist and saints, we invite you to discover authentic faith treasures, dive deep into the lives of beloved saints like Saint Brigid, explore miracles, Marian apparitions, and more through our acclaimed books, documentaries, and digital resources crafted by the legendary EWTN experts, Bob and Penny Lord. Experience virtual pilgrimages, can't travel to Ireland or Montefiore, embark on inspiring armchair pilgrimages to sacred sites from the comfort of your home, guided by faith filled storytellers from our Holy Family mission. Bring saintly devotion home. Transform your prayer space with relics, saint medals, icons, and spiritual gifts, all available in our huge Catholic store with up to 50% off, exclusive rewards, and free shipping over $18. Support a mission of evangelization. Every purchase supports the cloistered Augustinian nuns and our 40-plus year legacy of Catholic media for the glory of God and the sanctification of souls. Visit Journeys of Faith today and rekindle the sacred fire of hospitality and devotion. St. Brigid ignited, the miracles await. Kildare's double monastery, blueprint of Celtic hospitality. On the windswept plains of Kildare, Saint Brigid of Ireland founded something revolutionary, a double monastery unique in Western Christendom that stood as a beacon of Celtic hospitality. Imagine men and women consecrated to God, living in interconnected communities, guided by Brigid's miraculous heart for the poor and the pilgrim. This was not just a shelter for religious. Kildare was the living heart of a vast Christian welcome, pulsating from its refectory tables and prayerful cloisters into every farmhouse and traveler's road across Erin's green expanse. St. Brigid's monastery was a marvel of order and outreach. No one was turned away. The great oak, Kildare, the Church of the Oak, became the poetic symbol of open-handed welcome, tables groaning with bread, milk, and honey, hearths ablaze, a perpetual fire kept burning as a sign of God's unfailing charity. Her cell was known as a place where the needy would leave transformed, their wounds bound, their dignity restored. Here, monasteries double as hospitals, food pantries, and safe havens, centuries before social safety nets existed. The spirit of Kildare was one where serving the hungry, clothing the naked, and protecting the stranger was not mere duty, but a living imitation of Christ himself. Brigid's legendary hospitality inspired a ripple effect as hospitality became the template for the sanctity of all Celtic homes. With every loaf of bread broken and every cloak shared, Ireland's own Mary of the Gale wrote a living gospel, her faith in miracles echoing to this day. The miracles of the hearth, butter, bacon, and bottomless beer. Step into the world of Saint Brigid of Ireland, and you will find her hearth ablaze with more than just warmth. It blazes with miracles. The holy abbess, whose legacy still illuminates the lives of Catholics across the globe, was living testament to Christ's exhortation. Whatever you do for the least of my brethren, you do for me. In the windswept fields and monastic kitchens of Kildare, Brigid's table overflowed not just with food, but with God's generous supernatural bounty. The tales of Brigid's miracles read like parables woven into everyday Irish life. Butter was a staple, yet in times of scarcity, Brigid's charity seemed impossible until the Lord intervened. Historians and hagiographers alike recount how a destitute Brigid, compelled by compassion, would give away her abbey's last supply of butter to the poor. Inevitably, the dairy returned to brimming fullness, a testament to her unwavering trust in divine providence. Each churn was a silent song of faith, echoing Christ's own miracles of multiplication. Bacon, too, took on a mystical significance at Brigid's table. When hungry strangers arrived, she never hesitated to share for all guests or Christ himself. And when the larder seemingly emptied, new slabs appeared as if placed by angelic hands. Bread, meat, and daily milk. Brigid's larder was a font from which flowed heaven's charity, a model for every Catholic home to open its doors fearlessly to the needy. And then there was beer, not as a fleeting comfort, but as a sacramental symbol of hospitality and joy. Brigid's beer never ran dry, her ale poured freely for visiting pilgrims, the cask miraculously replenished by the author of life itself. In the ancient monastic refectories, this bottomless beer became a sign. Every Christian hearth, when surrendered to Christ's love and the intercession of the saints, becomes a place of plenty. It is in these simple, wondrous acts, multiplying butter, birthing bacon anew, and offering bottomless beer, that St. Brigid's legacy pulses through time. Her miracles beckon us to rediscover the treasures of Catholic hospitality, to see every meal, every guest, and every act of charity as an opportunity for heaven to touch the earth once more. The symbolism of St. Brigid's cross and home protection in the woven rushes of St. Brigid's cross, centuries of Irish faith and tradition entwine, a sacred symbol as vivid in meaning today as when it first took shape in the modest cell of Kildare. Catholic homes throughout Ireland still hang this cross above doorways, windows, and hearths, trusting it to ward off danger and invite heaven's blessing. But St. Brigid's cross is more than an artifact. It testifies to the miraculous hospitality and divine charity that flowed from the heart of Saint Brigid of Ireland. Rooted in ancient custom but hallowed by Christian legend, the cross recalls the night Saint Brigid, tending to a dying chieftain, crafted its first form from nearby reeds. As she wove, Brigid spoke of Christ and the redeeming power of the cross, and through her words and faith, the chieftain's soul was won for heaven. Since then, each woven cross on St. Brigid's Day, February 1st, becomes a prayer inviting Christ's peace, protection, and mercy into the home, the domestic church. Its unique shape, a central square with arms radiating into the world, signifies the four corners of a home encircled by God's guardianship. In Catholic tradition, the cross doesn't merely repel fire, disease, or misfortune. It sanctifies the very air of a dwelling, whispering ancient promises with every strand. Passing under its presence, generations of the faithful have remembered the miracles and motherly care of Saint Brigid of Ireland and renewed their hope that even today her prayers protect every threshold, every loved one, every pilgrim soul who enters in faith. February 1st feast day traditions for Catholic families. On February 1st, Catholics around the world honor the memory and miracles of Saint Brigid of Ireland. This day is not merely a memorial on the liturgical calendar, it is a radiant feast inviting families to joyfully embody Brigid's legacy of charity and hospitality within their own homes. Faithful households can begin the day with a family prayer invoking Saint Brigid's intercession. The ancient Irish prayer to Saint Brigid is often recited, asking her to bless the house, the table, the hearth, and the hearts within. Lighting a candle in her honor recalls the fire of faith that burned perpetually in her monastery, symbolizing Christ's light carried through her hospitality. Crafting St. Brigid's crosses from rushes or reeds is a treasured tradition, both a tactile catechesis and a sacramental act. These crosses, emblematic of her monastic protection, are customarily placed above doors or in kitchens, seeking her blessing over the family and their sustenance for the year to come. Feasting mirroring Brigid's legendary generosity often features simple but hearty fare. Fresh baked breads, creamy butter, and dairy are particularly associated with her, the patroness of farm workers and milkmaids. Some families set an extra place at the table, inviting Christ to be present in the stranger and honoring Brigid's rule that every guest is Christ. Many Catholic parents lead their children in charitable acts on this feast, preparing meals for neighbors in need, visiting the sick or elderly, or collecting food for pantries, thus echoing St. Brigid's pure hearted service. In every gesture of hospitality and prayer, families are drawn deeper into the supernatural wealth of Catholic tradition, receiving joy in both giving and receiving, just as St. Brigid taught. From cloister to kitchen, monastic charity, and everyday meals. Step into the hallowed cloisters where Saint Brigid of Ireland lived, and you'll discover a tradition nourished by more than just daily bread. For Brigid, hospitality was not a perfunctory act, but a sacred vocation, a living out of Christ's radical charity. In her monasteries, the doors were always open, pilgrims at the door, the hungry from distant counties, neighbors in want, all were greeted as Christ himself. Stories abound of St. Brigid's table blossoming with miraculous abundance, her pantry multiplying loaves and ale when famine threatened. Her charity was not reserved for the privileged, but stretched to the poorest, teaching that the simplest meal offered with love is a banquet in the eyes of heaven. Brigid's vision of hospitality was woven into the very fabric of monastic life. Bells tolled for prayer and also for supper, because every act, whether sacred liturgy or the breaking of bread, could sanctify the soul. In our own kitchens today, the legacy of Brigid's monastic charity is lived each time a home cooked meal is shared with gratitude and an extra seat appears at the table for an unexpected guest. Her cross, often placed above hearths, reminds Catholic families that every meal can become an act of offering. Cooking and feasting are embraced not out of luxury, but as a tangible ministry, proof that the divine can infuse the ordinary, and that charity is the truest miracle to ever grace a simple, faithful supper. Welcoming the stranger, Brigid's rule of holy hospitality. Saint Brigid of Ireland was no ordinary abbess. She was a blazing torch of Christian charity, whose doors knew no boundary and whose table never emptied. In a land of rugged hills and icy winds, she carved sanctuaries of warmth, beckoning travelers, the famished and the broken-hearted, with a love so practical it worked miracles. Brigid's radical hospitality wasn't accidental or sporadic. It became her rule, a cornerstone for her monastic community and a testament to the gospel lived out in action. Her monasteries were famed throughout ancient Ireland as places where none were turned away. Brigid taught that every stranger must be welcomed as Christ himself. Herdsmen and poets, beggars and chieftains all crossed the threshold of Kildare cloister, each treated with an honor that revealed their true dignity as children of God. Brigid herself often gave away even her abbey's last loaves and pitchers, relying on divine providence, a trust rewarded with frequent miracles of abundance. Tradition tells of bread multiplying for hungry guests, butter never running out, and even water transformed into beer for those in need. Hospitality for St. Brigid was a living theology, mercy in action, Eucharistic love poured out. She insisted her nuns and monks keep their hearts and hands perpetually open, echoing Christ's own invitation. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. Matthew 25:35. In a world where the lonely and the lost still seek refuge, St. Brigid's rule is not a relic, but a living challenge to every Christian home. Let no guest leave unblessed. Let every door swing wide, and let every act of welcome spark a miracle of its own. Incorporating Brigidine practices into Lenten almsgiving. Across the misty hills of 5th century Ireland, Saint Brigid of Ireland wove together a luminous legacy of hospitality that transformed the Celtic landscape into a canvas of Christian mercy. During Lent, the church's sacred season of penance, prayer, and sacrifice, her monastic vision of charity becomes a living blueprint for every Catholic home. Embracing Brigidine practices offers a pathway not only to give, but to give beautifully, remembering always that in serving the poor one serves Christ himself. Begin with the warmth of the hearth. In the tradition of Brigid's perpetual fire, let your home burn with generosity in small daily ways. Set aside family meals to welcome guests, even if only virtually or in spirit, offering prayer for the homeless, the hungry, and your own neighbors in need. Replicate St. Brigid's House of the Poor, where no beggar was ever turned away, by creating an almsgiving jar for loose change or Lenten sacrifices. Encourage children to drop coins with every act of kindness or moment of self control, transforming simple discipline into tangible mercy. Brigid's wisdom teaches a radical openness. Observe her spirit of fealty, the holy welcome, by seeking out the overlooked and ignored. Reach out anonymously to someone struggling in your parish or town. Sponsor a meal, pay off a small debt, or support a local food bank, asking the Holy Spirit to guide your intentions. Let your Lenten alms, inspired by Brigid, be gifts adorned by humility and prayer, not mere transactions. Attune your heart to miracles. Brigid believed that faith and generosity united could open the floodgates of heaven. She multiplied butter and loaves for the hungry, making do with little, yet always trusting in God's abundance. In the same way, trust that every sincere offering, no matter how modest, will be multiplied by divine grace this Lent, a quiet miracle repeated in every act of Brigidine charity. Irish saints and the Eucharistic heart of charity. In the windswept emerald hills of Ireland, the faith of the early church took root in hearts both fiery and gentle. Among these earliest disciples of Christ, the Irish saints stand luminously, their lives an unbroken testimony to sacrificial love, humility, and above all, radical hospitality. Nowhere is this more evident than in the legendary witness of Saint Brigid of Ireland, whose charity became an incarnate sign of the Eucharist's inexhaustible bounty. For the Irish saints, charity was never mere philanthropy, it was a direct outpouring from the sacred wellspring of the Eucharist, which they revered as the living heart of Christ beating at the center of every monastic community. Their hospitality flowed not from worldly abundance, but from a mystical confidence that the bread of heaven would multiply, just as Christ fed the multitudes with a few loaves and fishes. Each guest was welcomed as Christ himself. Every humble meal was imbued with the miracle of divine presence. St. Brigid, the Mary of the Gale, exemplified this Eucharistic vision. In her monastic foundations, no stranger was turned away. Beggars, travelers, even lepers were embraced as honored guests. Brigid's table was never empty. Her faith in the Lord's provision continually multiplied food, drink, and shelter for all in need. Ancient accounts speak of milk flowing from empty churns, butter miraculously appearing for the feast days, and food baskets ever replenishing. For Brigid, charity was both a commandment and a miracle, rooted in the daily celebration of the holy mysteries from which grace spilled over into practical, unceasing works of mercy. This unmistakable Eucharistic spirit set the Irish monastic tradition apart and fostered a civilization steeped in compassion. In their lived theology, the altar and the hearth were spiritually entwined. The reverence shown to the real presence in the tabernacle was mirrored in the loving hospitality extended at every door. As the saints of Ireland recognized, to feed the hungry and shelter the poor was to touch the living Christ veiled in the guise of the least of these. Thus, the legacy of Irish saints is not distant or inaccessible. Their charity, ablaze with Eucharistic devotion, calls each believer to become a sacramental sign of Christ's mercy within our own homes, to break bread and to break barriers until every table overflows with the loving abundance of God. Recipes of the saints, baking Brigid's bannock bread. The aroma of freshly baked bread has always evoked the warmth of home and the bonds of sharing, an echo of the monastic hospitality that Saint Brigid of Ireland, the beloved Mary of the Gale, infused into her every act. Among the simplest and most enduring ways to honor Saint Brigid's spirit is to recreate her bannock bread, a humble yet profound testament to her generosity. Traditionally baked on her feast day, this rustic bread carries with it the whispers of miracles, the memory of overflowing loaves, and the faith that multiplies in the breaking and giving. Gather the essentials in 2 cups oat flour or substitute with all purpose flour, 1 teaspoon baking soda, 1/2 teaspoon salt, 2 tablespoons softened butter, 1 cup buttermilk. Making Brigid's bannock. Mix the oat flour, baking soda, and salt in a bowl, invoking Saint Brigid's blessing with each measure. Cut in the butter, working it gently until the mixture resembles holy loam, humble yet fertile. Slowly add the buttermilk, combining until a soft dough forms, remembering the tales of Brigid distributing bread to the hungry at Kildare. Turn the dough onto a floured board, shape it into a round about an inch thick, with a knife mark across the top echoing Brigid's legendary reed crosses meant to guard hearth and heart. Place on a griddle or in a hot oven-safe skillet and bake at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 to 25 minutes until golden and hollow when tapped. Breaking bread in St. Brigid's name transforms an ordinary meal into an act of reverent remembrance. As steam rises from the loaf, recall how Brigid, with monastic grace, welcomes strangers, offering not just food, but faith, radical hospitality, and comfort for the soul. This bread, served warm and divided among loved ones, becomes a real taste of Ireland's sacred tradition, reminding us that, like Brigid, our table too can be a place of miracles. Conclusion: welcoming St. Brigid's radiant hospitality into our Catholic homes. The fire of Saint Brigid of Ireland was not merely a physical hearth, it blazed with charity, hospitality, and transformative faith. In her devotion to Christ and the stranger, the poor, and the pilgrim, Brigid turned monastic doors into beacons of hope. Today, her fervor is a rallying cry for us at Journeys of Faith and for every devout Catholic striving to reclaim the treasures of our ancient faith. Reviving her tradition of open-hearted welcome, we foster Eucharistic devotion, personal sanctity, and an audacious trust in miracles. In a world starved for genuine encounter, let Brigid's spirit renew our homes as sanctuaries, places where the lonely drink deeply from wells of true kindness and the weary find rest in faith's embrace. The living legacy of St. Brigid of Ireland calls us to action, to give, serve, pray, and celebrate the miracles that flow from a faith-filled heart. If you're inspired by her example, join us at Journeys of Faith. Through our pilgrimages, authentic Catholic media, and faith-filled treasures, we carry Brigid's torch, spreading her divine hospitality anew every day. Family, there is more to this post, so please see the link in the description for the rest of the article. Be sure to click the link in the description for special news item, and since there is more to this article, finish reading and check out the special offer. Visit journeysoffaith.com website today.
It's your journey, but we won't make the trip alone, 'cause we know God will lead us home. It's our journey.